gotta look at the actual.
I got it. Well, I don't do that. I got a ton of stuff to say, but I'm not comparing it to the House bill. Look, we got a policy. The Senate is not getting involved in House bills until they get to here. Really, I mean, that's been our long standing.
Is this when you have new products on the governor's task force?
The governor supports it. And the administration, the governor and the administration are going to go out and say that they support it. And I believe the Conservation Group is supporting it. National Research Defense Council supporting it. They're all going to support it.
Richmond.com. Do you know what channel you're on?
They probably ain't jumping for joy.
Thanks.
You want it in there? That's
It moves us in the right direction. Okay?
why you want it out.
We ain't perfect, but everyone didn't want to do this.
Says not
Some of the groups that are opposed to it, it's not me. They wouldn't support it. Free electricity to pay for everybody's 4-year college. Okay? And I appreciate and it's a long bill. It is a real long bill. Well, it's actually, the original one was 60 pages. This is 44, but it's smaller print. Okay. It's a little misleading. Let me tell you, I plowed through it last night. It took a few hours. And there's been some.
Nothing changed.
That was the first word out of my mouth.
Appreciate it very much.
Oh, at least you're speaking to me. That's really good. Come over here and talk to me.
I'll explain it. I won't merge my bill.
Can I get one of those? You don't? That's all right. I'll get one then. Should be able to get one then. I would imagine that's eventually getting one.
Frank, here's what let's not merge the bills until
Last 3 years. We don't want to get into some use argument. Do it some short term. So, which
284 and 285 are actually, it's in there, and, I'll just discuss it. It's not real complicated. I'll do 967. He's 967. 967
Once we got the substitute, right?
and they're both substitutes.
Pints of blood.
They're both identical.
What's that? It's all in the base rate.
Yeah, I'll explain those two solar bills that the Democrats have. But there's technically, they're in there.
Democrats the only one that's got one that's not incorporated.
Are you in the subcommittee?
I believe that.
Mark.
Who's on first?
Right.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome all of the disinterested parties that have joined us here this morning. And I expect that there will be a chorus of Kumbaya. Having said that, the first bill that we will take up is Senator Sasslaw's bill 967. Senator Saslaw.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, what I thought I would do, can you all hear me? Is first go through basic difference and then get a little more into some of the detail. Of the bill, if you don't have.
Why don't we take the substitute up?
Yeah, adopt this up, I'll move that we adopt the substitute.
Been moved and seconded that the substitute amendment
For 967,
be adopted. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, and the substitute is before us.
I don't think you all want me to go page by page for 61 pages. So what I'm gonna do is I'll summarize this and then get a little deeper into it. But basically, from the standpoint of tax savings, the current law, nothing would occur until a minimum of 2022. In this bill, starting July 1st, as a result of the tax cut, corporate tax cut in Washington, there'll be $125 million windfall, which will be rebated to credit it back to the customers. And that will happen every year, the $125 million a year. SCC review, currently under the rate freeze from several years ago, there's no review until, after 2017 and 2019. 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020 get reviewed in 2021 in this bill. Utility over-earnings under current law, 100% is from 2017 to 2019 is retained by the utility. After 2019, 70% was subject to refund, and the utility kept 20%, 30%. Beginning in 2017, 100% of the over-earnings have to be reinvested in the grid transformation and solar energy and wind energy. And the failure to do that results in refunds to the customer, okay? Energy share, currently right now they're doing between $7 and $8 million. That's going to 13 million. And it'll be 130 million over the next decade. And by the way, that's coming totally out of the stockholders. That's being paid for by after-tax profits, okay? Not the ratepayer. Energy efficiency, things that they do, it's going to
be 870 million will be spent over the next 10 years. 870 million. And there will be 3 or 4 tests as to whether it's beneficial or not, as opposed to strictly the rim test, which is being used now, and essentially is being used to turn down virtually anything for, any request for solar energy. Renewable. In 1349, near the end, Frank I and Don McKeechin stuck in 500 megawatts of solar to be developed by 2020. That was passed, that goal was passed last summer. What we've got in here now is 5,000 over the next 10 years, 5,000 megawatts of solar and wind, onshore or off. And we've stated in each case, it's in the public interest to approve these. This is going to be the policy of the state. So we've got that in. Then undergrounding. That's been twice turned down by the State Corporation Commission. In here, we also put that's in the public interest, and the cost, it cannot be any more than 5% of their distribution costs. That's to get the power from the transmission lines to the house, and it'll come to about 180 million a year. Now, while the costs are being, they'll wind up doing a little over 20% of their current network, and they're going to start with it'll be the homes that have been having an average of what I think 8, 9 outages a year. So, but it can't exceed $180 million. Now, here's the advantage for the areas not covered. It will cut 50% of the outages when the project's finished. 50% of the outages, and increase, and this is where it'll help out the rural areas, it'll increase their response time of the utilities to get them back up 50% faster than they're doing it now. And it'll be about 100, they can't spend more than $180 million. If anybody in here is in Prince William, we got an agreement for it in that Haymarket area. There's been a big brouhaha about where the power lines are going, since they're going to be above the ground. Well, they're not going to be above the ground in this bill. We're putting them below the ground, okay? Which is probably what some people wished I was. So, but anyway, it's going to be below the ground. To get into a little bit more, okay, and I'll try not to take too much more time, Mr. Chairman, because
I'm about to cut you off.
thank you. The legislation is going to provide, as I said, $1 billion in customer benefits, refunds, potential base rate cut, pass-through of tax relief, and 130 million, in addition to the billion, 130 million energy share commitment. It also is a tenfold increase from 500 megawatts of solar to 5,000 megawatts. And by the way, 5,000 megawatts is 1,250,000 homes. 1,250,000 homes. But that'll also include wind, and it will. The utilities can purchase 25% of this. I think it's 25% from outside suppliers. Okay, so it's going to open up the solar market. It lifts the base rate freeze. I should have mentioned that was lifted 36 days ago. January 1st, it was not going to expire till 2021, till the end of 2020, but now it's done. It ended December 31st, 2017. I mentioned the immediate pass-through of $125 million every year for the tax windfall. The energy efficiency programs, again, total of $1 billion, and 130 million of that is company funded. In other words, it'll be out of after-tax profits. I mentioned the solar. They're going to be, instead of biennial reviews, there will be triennial reviews. If they over-earned in that 3-year, instead of the 2-year biennial review, they over-earned, they either have to, if they didn't spend whatever the over-earnings were in investing in the items that I suggested, then that money has to go back to the ratepayer. Goes back to the ratepayer if they haven't spent the over-earnings on grid transformation, renewables. They can't keep it. They can't keep any of it. Okay. That's a technical term. It further clarifies that the SEC approval of the grid transformation is required prior to implementation of the plan, and there's also an SCC review of the cost after project completion. First triennial review is eligible for customer refunds and a base rate reduction up to $50 million a year if enough investments in grid transformation and renewable energy haven't been made. Subsequent triennial reviews are eligible for both refunds and rate cuts, and they will no longer look back through 2 review periods. It's just that one, okay? And so if they over-earn for 2, and keep in mind, basically a lot of the over-earning is how you account. You know, can you write an expense off over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 1 year? You know, if you have a big expense, you write it off in 1 year. You don't have over-earnings. If you stretch it out over 10 to 15 years, you could possibly have over-earnings. Permanently writes off all coal ash costs incurred prior to January 1st, 2018, that's this year, at estimated at $425 million. That's essentially most of the bill, Mr. Chairman.
All right, essentially most of the bill. Senator Wagner, any educational additives you would like to share with us?
Let me try to do that, because the bill I have is identical to the one that Senator Sasslaw put together. It would be the hope of the subcommittee to report both bills to the full committee, and at that point probably merge them together in front of the full committee. Just to kind of wrap up some of the things that Senator Sasslaw said in his presentation. It's important to remember that 2017 will undergo a rate review, that the immediate credits from Dominion will be in the neighborhood of $133 million. APCO customers will receive a $10 million on fuel recovery. Essentially, the rates, when done here, will revert back to the exact same rates customers were paying in 2009 for the average residential customer. That means about a $5 a month reduction. The tax reform that you talked about, despite some of the machinations you hear about, the tax reform won't help anybody. It'll help every customer of Dominion. It results in an immediate rate reduction of $125 million annually for those customers with Dominion, and $50 million annually for those customers with APCO. I think it's important to understand that for the first time, we've introduced the concept of electric distribution grid transformation projects, and for purposes of the less distribution network is that network that actually feeds your homes, businesses, that type of thing. It comes from the substation and delivers a voltage out, and ultimately step down to your homes and whatnot. That's where we can make the biggest impact on the investment. That's where the smart metering will go. That's where we figure out how to integrate renewables at the distribution level, which you can relate to smaller scale renewable type projects, which is going to be an important element as we try to reach this 5,000 megawatt goal that we're putting into place. It also includes two-way communication and cyber and physical security at all these levels, automated meters, smart meters, LED street lights, and electric vehicle charging stations. All of that's going to be encompassed into what we look forward. And I hope it's a vision we all share in this room of a grid that's the 21st century. think all of us know in this room where the technology's headed, where we're going. We want to see Virginia move into a leadership role, and this bill will allow us to make those investments in the distribution grid that allow everybody to take advantage of the new economy and move forward. Obviously, it's going to take out over time, which is why I think you see in here a $200 million a year commitment over the next 10 years to put this grid into place. It'll also, in the process, make a much harder grid, more resilient against both weather events as well as cyber security events. Dick covered it a lot. I think it's a huge step going from 500 megawatts to 5,000 megawatts of renewable energy. One of the things that is written into the bill under one of the enactment clauses is a utility battery storage. And I think that's important. APCO in their service territory has used that up in Ohio, but we're going to see a commitment from 10 megawatts additional storage here in the Virginia service territory, and I think it's important to note that Dominion, for the first time that I'm aware of, is committed to 30 megawatts of battery storage. Storage, whether it's pump storage, battery storage, or whatever, is going to be essential to really making renewable energy a full part, 24/7 reliable source of electricity. A couple of other things that weren't mentioned by Dick, but I think it's important to mention, is written into both of our bills, is there's a 2% reduction for large users, recognizing our manufacturers and shipyards and the major consumers of electricity, a 2% reduction with a commitment for 3 years to use that. Also written into the bill, and I think it's important to understand, we have this utility infrastructure. It does, with its own communications, as you move to a smarter utility, its own broadband. We're going to ask the utilities to make a study of whether or not we can use that existing capability, leverage off of that, to use what we have in place as a grid to bring broadband to perhaps places that don't have broadband right now under the guise of that. And we expect them to report on economic development activities. By that I mean, for those that followed, there was attempts last year, over the last couple of years, what have we got to do to increase sites ready to use throughout Virginia. We have lost several economic development opportunities because we don't have sites ready to go in Virginia. This bill will incorporate our utilities coming back and reporting to us what we need to do to ensure that the appropriate infrastructure, be it electricity or gas, can be brought to these new sites to do that. I think Dick already reported on the commitment of energy efficiency, $870 million is a huge amount of money over 10 years. And then some of the other things, I think the weatherization program, I just want to add on to that. That is a commitment of $13 million a year by Dominion, and it is not part of any rate reduction. That comes from the stockholders' pocket. That's a significant commitment to both energy share as well as the weatherization projects. I believe that's about it, Mr. Chairman. We've knocked this thing to death, and turn it back over to you.
Senator Saslaw and Senator Wagner, is there concurrence and agreement on these two bills after the extensive discussions that have gone on?
Mr. Chairman, I believe there are 2 technical amendments that need to be adopted, but for the remittance in saying, I want to thank a whole lot of parties. Senator Saslaw and I have spent, but the amount of people that have gotten together to take the bill to the point where it is now, and it's my understanding that white smoke is coming from the chimney at the Vatican on this bill, Mr. Chairman, but
Well, I'm being prayerful that there is.
okay, all right, and I believe there's a couple of amendments. Jack, do you want to fill us in on those amendments?
Mr. Chairman, I believe Frank Money has.
Okay. Frank, you want to report?
Mr. Chairman, the first amendment is on page 37 of the substitute at line 972. After the phrase under clauses 1 and 2, strike the rest of the language on line 972 down through distribution and substations on line 976.
Senator Wagner moves and Senator Saslaw seconds the amendments deleting the language on lines 72 through 76. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, and that's approved. The amendment is adopted.
The second amendment, Mr. Chairman, adds another enactment clause to the bill. It would be on the last page of the bill, page 62. What we'll be doing is adding after number 22, at line 1643, a lengthy paragraph. I don't have copies of it, but I'll be glad to read it if you have a minute.
We are anxiously awaiting your reading, sir.
22, that from, I think it should read July 1, 2018 until July 1, 2028, not more than one half of the combined capital investment amount attributable to, 1, investments in new utility-owned generation facilities utilizing energy derived from sunlight or from wind, semicolon 2, investments in electric distribution grid transformation projects, semicolon 3, investments in one or more new underground facilities to replace one or more existing overhead distribution facilities of 69 kilovolts or less located within the Commonwealth, semicolon 4, investment in the estimated additional cost of placing the 2 proposed pilot projects for the construction of qualifying electrical transmission lines of 230 kilovolts or less, parentheses, but greater than 69 kilovolts, close parentheses, in whole or in part underground, in excess of the cost of placing the same lines overhead, assuming accepted industry standards for undergrounding to ensure safety and reliability, and 5, the projected cost for the utility to design, implement, and operate energy efficiency programs, including a margin to be recovered on operating expenses, submitted to the Commission for approval, shall be A, investments in one or more new underground facilities to replace one or more existing overhead distribution facilities of 69 kilovolts or less located within the Commonwealth, semicolon B, investment in the estimated additional cost of placing the 2 proposed pilot projects for the construction of qualifying electrical transmission lines of 230 kilovolts or less, but greater than 69 kilovolts, close parentheses, in whole or in part underground, in excess of the cost of placing the same line overhead, assuming accepted industry standards for undergrounding to ensure reliability and safely, and C, we're almost done, electric grid distribution transformation projects solely designed for physical security at distribution substations.
Mr. Chairman,
As I understand it, it's one half sunlight, wind, undergrounding, 2 pilot projects, any efficiency programs. Got it? It's been moved and seconded that the amendment as orally reported by Mr. Munyon be adopted. Is there any discussion? Before we do Senator Newman, I know you had Senate Bill 965. Does that amendment incorporate what you're addressing, sir?
Yes, sir. It does incorporate the repeal. It also incorporates the new timeframes and pump storage. The bill may go further than I would have liked us to go on renewables and undergrounding and all those other things, sir. But I think that the tenets of mine are now in the Wagner-Saswell bill. Yes, sir.
And what is your preference as to 965, sir?
You either roll it or you can make it go away, either one. But I still like mine a little better, Mr. Chairman, but I understand that there's a lot of people that like it.
Senator Sasslaw moves and Senator Wagner seconds that Senate Bill 965 be rolled into their respective bills and that he be listed as a co-chief patron. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Mr.
All those
Chairman,
opposed.
just something, I think this may be helpful to all of you if you've got a pencil and a piece of paper. The givebacks in 966 and 967, you can, I'll tell you where they're located. They're in the enactment clauses at the back, and write down, look at number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 15. Okay, that contains the bulk of the giveback, of just about all the givebacks. And take a look at 56-585.1:2. That's the energy shares.
that'll tell you most of what are the givebacks in this bill, without you having to plow through 60 pages.
All right, with enormous reluctance, and let me be very clear about this. It has been suggested to me that there is concurrence on these bills as they have evolved. If you are supportive of it, all I need you to do is identify who you are, who you represent, and you are supportive. And then if we get to contrarians, we'll see where we are. Anybody in support?
Yes, sir. John Russell, on behalf of the committee, and despite your admonition, I do want to thank Senator Wagner and thank Senator Sasslaw for what they've done. Senator Sasslaw in particular has driven a lot of the environmental.
Okay, you support it.
Yes, sir, I do.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Chris West here representing Conservatives for Clean Energy. We support this legislation because of the energy efficiency language incorporated.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Mike Town with Virginia League of Conservation Voters. We're supportive.
Thank you very much, sir.
Dewan Robinson, Natural Resources Defense Council, we're also supportive.
Thank you, sir.
Chelsea Harnish, Virginia Energy Efficiency Council, we support the bill.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Matt Strickler with Governor Northam's Office and the Secretary of Natural Resources, and we support the compromise substitute.
You understand this bill?
Best that I can. Angel Navarro, my deputies, understand this a lot better, so if you got questions, we might want to defer to her.
I agree. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Ron? Thank you. Anybody else who wants to express their succinct support?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Tyson Lee with Apex Clean Energy, and we support inclusion of solar and wind in the public interest.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, anyone that has a contrarian opinion? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Sam Towle. I'm the Attorney General Herring's Deputy Attorney General.
Okay,
For
just give me your
simplification.
succinct opposition. I don't need you to read the narrative. Tell me why you don't like it.
Yes, sir. I would like to say that we do appreciate the Governor's Office convening groups to work over the course of the week. We do believe that there are lots of policy positions in this bill. There are improvements over what was introduced. We're here in our capacity as Consumer Counsel, and it is in that perspective that we're offering these comments. There are elements in the current form of the bill that are laudatory from various policy perspectives. An increased focus on renewable generation.
I don't need the laudatory part. Tell me why you oppose the bill.
Sir, we believe that these policy initiatives can be accomplished without the unusual rate-making restrictions that are imposed by this legislation. Other than the $200 million one-time credit for significant past over-earnings and conformance with the federal tax law, for the perspective of Virginians as ratepayers, we believe that portions of this bill will effectively continue and extend the rate freeze, which of course the Attorney General has opposed from the beginning. The fundamental concerns the Consumer Counsel have are the same that were in the SCC letter that was written on January 29th to 12 senators. We believe that the Customer Credit Reinvestment Offset mechanism will prevent customers from receiving the money that they would otherwise be due under the pre-freeze law. Nor do we believe that, despite the name, that the money will offset the cost of any proposed grid modernization. Customers will continue to be billed the full freight for those new investments made by the companies. And effectively, it is our belief that customers will be paying twice for some of these investments. If no credits are actually issued to consumers, there can be no cut to the base rate that makes up about 60% of customers' bills. Therefore, even though the bill theoretically allows for a potential base rate cut up to $50 million in 2021, practically speaking, we believe that any refunds or base rate cut is highly unlikely. The bill continues what we believe is the unfortunate practice of limiting SCC flexibility and discretion with respect to rate making. First, it removes a $2 billion distribution line undergrounding program from SCC's cost-benefit analysis. Second, it prevents the SCC from applying regulatory accounting principles, allowing utilities to book expenses in a manner potentially detrimental to customers, further reducing the potential for credits and any subsequent base rate cut. Monopoly utility rate making is an esoteric of law that is true. It has a profound impact on the lives of Virginians. There are 4 participants that regularly appear in this space: the SCC, the Office of Consumer Counsel, the Virginia and Old Dominion committees that represent industrial customers, and the electric utilities, of course, themselves. And 3 of those groups have expressed similar concerns with respect to the rate-making component of this bill, although, of course, I do not presume to speak for any of the others. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
Can I say something?
No. Thank you very much for being here on behalf of the AG, and I appreciate that you're representing the Office of Consumer Counsel. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Bob Shippey, Sierra Club. We're still in opposition to the bill, but before you say, well, that's just Sierra Club being Sierra Club, let me explain just very briefly why. We got some of this language last night during a pretty exciting Super Bowl game and didn't really get a chance to fully digest it, so we'll do that in the coming days.
Well, your priorities were wrong last
Yeah,
night.
I guess so.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. And I think the AG's office kind of covered some of our other concerns. The $200 million seems light based on the data that we have. We feel like that should be just fully reviewed by the SEC. And then some of the mechanisms going forward, we do have similar concerns about you're offsetting over earnings and building that into base rates going forward. So I think these things could be fixable, and would love to at least get you on this right now.
Thank you for being with us and your brevity, sir. Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tony Smith. I'm CEO of Secure Futures and member of the Virginia Distributed Solar Alliance. And I would like to respectfully suggest a friendly amendment to this bill.
Do you have a member of this committee that's going to offer it, sir?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a member of this committee that is going to offer the amendment?
I'm making a suggestion as a.
Thank you. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah. We're very supportive.
Where would you like to propose an amendment?
Line 351, where the definition of rooftop solar.
Okay, if I could direct the committee's attention to line 351 on page 14. Yes, sir. We're with you.
So, while we are very supportive of utility scale solar, I think this definition is a little confusing because it talks about distributed solar, and the true definition of distributed solar is that it is used where it's produced. So we would respectfully suggest adding the following words at the end of that sentence, and that are connected behind the customer's meter. This way would clarify that the solar electricity on the rooftop is going directly to that customer as opposed to going back to the grid, which would essentially not be in the public interest because then you're incurring T&D costs all over.
Have you shopped this amendment at all, sir?
We have shared our concerns with, yes sir, we have with the interested parties with Dominion specifically.
And after you shared it with the interested parties, that it suggested to us that in agreement, would they accept or reject your amendment?
It was sort of left
Yes, sir.
unspoken to.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, Mr. Chairman.
Just wait a minute, Lacy.
Don't put it in writing, give it to me, and I'll look at it.
If you would be so kind, maybe to submit that in writing, give it to Mr. Munyon, the gentleman down at the far end of the table, who is our counsel. Senator Sasslaw and Senator Wagner will look at that proposed amendment for consideration, sir.
And we intend this as a friendly amendment, not to derail any of the intent of this huge piece of
Well,
legislation.
you look like a very affable gentleman, Ms. Payne, so I
We
accept
tried.
that.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else who may have a differing opinion? I would have been so disappointed if I hadn't heard from you this morning. How are you, sir?
Mr. Chairman. It's never my intention to disappoint you.
Ah, God, that's good.
I'm Edward Cicchini. I represent the Virginia Committee for Fair Utility Rates and the Old Dominion Committee for Fair Utility Rates, which consist of large industrial customers of Dominion and Appalachian Power, respectively. We have serious concerns about this legislation. We believe that it would be worse than the rate freeze that's now in effect.
It would be worse than the current rate?
Yes. As the commission concluded in its recent letters to senators and delegates, these bills, as introduced, would effectively extend the excess revenues already being collected by the base rates.
Have you
committee.
reviewed the substitute? I don't mean to interrupt you.
I have reviewed it quickly, but the key problems that we see with the bill, Mr. Chairman, remain in the substitute.
All right, thank you.
Ours go to the provisions in paragraph 8, 56,585.1A8. Those are basically the rate making and mandatory accounting and refund and rate reduction and increase provisions in the law at present, and those provisions in the code are being amended. We favor a simple approach, reverse the rate freeze and restore the commission's power to set rates and order refunds of excessive earnings. We're grateful that the governor convened the stakeholder group, but I want to emphasize that our simple approach is fully consistent with policy objectives like adding solar, modernizing the grid, and other policies that the Assembly may wish to pursue. The Assembly can mandate public policies that it deems important, and at the same time still require that customers be treated fairly by ensuring that they do not pay excessive rates. In other words, we don't see the need for the Assembly to restrict the Commission's authority to determine just and reasonable rates in order for the Assembly to accomplish its purpose of encouraging more investment in infrastructure that the Assembly deems to be important. There's simply no need to overcharge consumers in order to build important and indeed critical infrastructure.
Ed, thank you for your consistent advocacy, and I mean that in a complimentary way.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. All right, anyone else who may have a different opinion? Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Harrison Wallace. I'm with the Chesapeake Climate Action Network and the CCAN Action Fund. For brevity's sake, I think the Sierra Club spoke to it very well, but we are opposing this bill as of now because we feel that the SEC should have the full authority to go back and see how much money is owed, 15 and 16. And we still see places where customers could be double charged, as the Attorney General's office mentioned earlier. So right now we're still in opposition to the bill.
You get the gold star for your brevity, sir. Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, ladies and gentlemen of the subcommittee.
Senator Sturtevant's bills incorporated here. You might want to check with them.
Senator Sturtevant, how are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm just having the time of my morning. You had Senate Bill 901, is that correct?
Yes, sir. This is the undergrounding of utility lines bill that we've been attempting to address over the last several years in response to certain parts of the Commonwealth, many of which are in my district, that have the electricity go down when we have a major storm or sometimes just a lot of wind. And this is, last year we passed legislation that would have made the undergrounding of these lines in the public interest, made that a rebuttable presumption. We still have challenges with that, and so this would simply make the finding that undergrounding those lines where there have been outages 9 times out of 10 years at least in the public interest, period.
Senator Sturtevant, has your concept on the undergrounding been rolled into Senator Wagner's Bill 966 and Senator Saslaw's Bill 967?
That's my understanding of that.
Yeah. Are you okay if we roll yours into it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I'll make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Senator Sturtevant's Bill 901 be rolled in and included part of 967 and 966, list him as a co-chief patron. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Thank you very much for bringing that forward.
Before Senator Sturtevant goes, I want to thank him for this because it's not only in his district, but it's also in my district, which skirts across much of the Middle Peninsula, Northern Neck, and Eastern Hanover, where we have this tremendous problem as well. And it is disconcerting for me to hear that the Attorney General would not be in favor of more undergrounding of lines, particularly in places where it is desperately needed, because my citizens, including myself, have been without power for over a week at a time where we could have fixed it, and this gives us the opportunity to do that. Thank you, Senator Sturbeck.
Thank you.
Senator Sasslaw, is a 20-second helpful comment.
Let me tell you all in here, with respect to undergrounding, I have been in the General Assembly since '76. I've taken a lot of bills in. The only time the audience in any civic association got up and applauded, the only time, was when I told them that their wires would be put underground. And they were, one of the people remarked to me, they'd pay anything to keep the lights on. And I've had other people tell me they've had the same response talking to their residents about
Okay,
this.
your 20 seconds are up. Senator Wagner, you have 17 seconds.
17 seconds. Let me respond. I used to be, before I sold the shipyard, a relatively minor major electrical to the tune of $12,000, $14,000 a month was my electric bill. Far too frequently lost at least one or two phases of power. When you operate a shipyard, everything's three-phase. It cost me $10,000 an hour to have a shipyard go down. Sometimes it was 2, 3, or 4 hours. So I'm hearing from the industrial customers, well, let me tell you something. You know, I'd be happy to pay a little bit more money not to have my shipyard shut down for 2 or 3 hours consistently, probably once every 2 months or so. That's the kind of thing we're talking about right now.
All right, Arlen, you.
Balance of time.
Yes, sir. How are you this morning, Arlen?
I'm fine, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It is so nice to see you this morning. It really is.
Happy 2018.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to make sure it's clear. We were invited to work on, or not work on, but to join the governor's mediation process as a resource. We did that, and we provided, technical assistance and technical feedback in terms of the various issues that came up. However, the State Corporation Commission and the staff are not part of the, looking for a placeholder word, but consensus or group that put together the bill that you have before you. In fact, Angela DeVaro was nice enough to send us a copy, or a preliminary copy of the draft you're looking at now. And we're still looking at it today and figuring out all the moving pieces and parts of which have been added to this morning. So I just want to make sure that our role in that process was clear.
Thank you, Arlen. The SEC's role is always abundantly clear because of your wonderful articulation. And thank you for being a resource, and we will look forward, if you have comments, once you've completed a review of the substitute.
We're glad to do that.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're getting ready to vote, and I just want to make one comment. A special thanks to Frank Munyon. He worked like a slave on this thing, and his mother-in-law passed away last week, and he had a funeral to go to Saturday. So I think, talking about it over and above the call of duty, Mr. Chairman, I just want to especially put a thanks to Frank Munyon for everything he's done on this. So thank you.
Well, Frank, regretfully, has had the laborious task of monitoring and guiding us on this subject for many years. And Frank, you truly have been a wonderful asset and tried to maintain some equilibrium against this otherwise unbalanced crowd that tries to do this. So thank you for what you do. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the subcommittee, we have Senate Bill 966 and 967 with a number of bills rolled in it, including Senate Bill 901 and Senate Bill 965.
With the adoption of the two line amendments, those were adopted for both the 966 and 967, is that correct?
Yes, sir, please. Okay. It's been moved and seconded that those bills be recommended to the full committee for their delightful afternoon consideration of it. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of recommending to the full committee to report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, and so be it.
Senator Chicken has a vote. Doesn't vote.
Senator Chafin, you have Senate Bill 922, sir.
I do, Mr. Chairman. 922, there's two parts to 922. The first part of 922 addresses an issue that was raised by APCO in their last biennial case, which questioned if tariffs can be adjusted when the overall rate doesn't change. So the amended language on line 158 allows the commission to make tariff adjustments that are revenue neutral, even if the rate case does not result in an overall rate change. That's the first part of that bill. And the second item addresses a decision that was reached by the commission in the last biennial case dealing with securitization of bonds issued not in Virginia but in West Virginia.
Give me 1 second. If you all would please be quiet as you're leaving. We're trying to move through some other legislation, so thank you very much.
So securitization bonds are recognized to be quite useful in minimizing burden on customers when the utility is dealing with situations such as stranded assets or major storm costs. And the bonds that were at issue were West Virginia securitization bonds for major storm costs. And those bonds were solely payable by West Virginia APCO customers through a surcharge and not at a cost or in any way the responsibility of Virginia's ratepayers. So the amendment on line 576 is to make certain that the West Virginia securitization bonds are not included in future Virginia rate increases.
Does any member of the subcommittee have any questions of Senator Chafin?
Yes,
I have 22.
I can offer this amendment.
Senator Chafin moves, and Senator Wagner seconds the amendment that he just made reference to. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, and that amendment is adopted. Any member of the subcommittee have any questions of Senator Chafin? If not, is there anyone in the public who would like to be heard very briefly on Senate Bill 922 as amended? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 922 as amended? Hearing none, a motion will be appropriate. It's been moved and seconded, Senate Bill 922. Excuse me, back up. Yes, sir.
I'm Tommy Oliver with the commission. Don't oppose it or support it, but just wanted to let you know I'm here to answer your questions.
Does any member of the subcommittee have any questions of the State Corporation Commission regarding 922 as amended? If not, it's kind of scary. We might understand it. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded, Senate 922 is amended. Be reported. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that bill is recommended for reporting to the full committee. All right. Frank, does that cover the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Wagner had Senate Bill 662.
There it is on here. Senate Bill 662.
It's a good bill.
Well,
I spent so much time on the other one. Let me just describe it.
if it was over your signature, I'm sure it has some
Absolutely.
paucity. of
Absolutely. All right.
Can you give me a little bit more about it?
It's a really good bill. How's that? No, what it does is allow customers, individual retail customers, to combine their demands in order to meet 5 megawatt threshold, which are permitted to purchase electricity from any licensed supplier. It's a measure to help grow renewables. It allows aggregation up to 5 megawatts, only if they're served by an electric co-op of more than 150,000 customer count. Mr. Chairman, this is a measure designed at co-ops. particular, we don't want our co-ops getting where they get uncompetitive prices and might be detrimental to economic development. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna ask that this committee make recommendation to the full committee that we carry this bill over. It's still an idea that's cooking right now. It took me a minute to come up to speed on where it was, but we wanna make sure, and I think you heard testimony previously about our co-ops requirement to have to charge a little bit more money for electricity. It's one of those things that we don't look at, but certain things that could be actually detrimental to economic expansion, the electric rates. And so I just want to keep this bill alive for another year while we continue to work on this issue. That's what the bill does.
Without objection, Senator Wagner moves and Senator Sasslaw seconds that the recommendation to the full committee on Senate Bill 662 be to carry it over for further consideration. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
And there
Mr. Chairman.
is a no. Mr. Mannion, does that complete it?
No, Mr. Chairman, there are two more bills. Senator Sasslaw has Senate Bill 284 and Senate Bill 285.
Those have been here.
They have been incorporated.
Want to just
But
strike
I-
those?
Yeah, are they?
It's been moved and
I'm pretty
seconded.
sure they are in there.
Yeah, they are in there, yeah.
It's been moved and seconded by Senator Wagner and Senator Sasslaw that Senate Bill 284 and 285 be stricken from the docket as the concepts have been incorporated in 966 and, let me finish, and 967 as amended. Yes, sir.
What's important, Mr. Chairman, about these, particularly 284, is it states that both large-scale solar generation and smaller-scale projects are, in paragraph B, paragraph A and B state that it's in the public interest of the Commonwealth to, to approve these. A deals with your large projects, and B deals with essentially rooftop type things that will go. And I think that one gentleman wanted to make sure that, and the member that he had offered, that it went into that building there. I'm pretty sure that that's mostly the intent, is that they're not going to put it on the top of a building that's only got 5,000–6,000 square feet. It's meant for a decent size, not to exceed 500 megawatts, whereas in paragraph A of 284, that's for larger projects. The other thing is on 285, it says that the commission will approve 8 months from the date of filing, final disposition of any filing by utility. And there seems to be something that I'm missing here. In another version that I saw of 285, or correct me if I'm wrong, I think it said from the time it's heard, then you had 3 months to deliver an opinion. And that should be in 966 and 967.
I believe it's 6 months, Mr. Chairman. It's been
6
rolling
months.
over.
So it's 6 months?
It is 6 months.
Okay, that's for an opinion.
Right.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
So they have been incorporated.
briefly to address some confusion. This was a bill that came out of the work of the Rubin Group.
Right.
And originally, they talked about a certain period of time following the filing, and then there was a suggested amendment to say that it would be 3 months after the date of the hearing. In the version that made its way to the substitute, it includes both elements.
In 6 months.
I thought it was 3.
I think it was 6. It's 6.
We find
I read it this morning.
All right.
All right. So we're going to strike 284 and 285.
Yeah.
All right. It's been moved and second. All in favor of striking those two bills,
Because they've
signify
been
by saying
incorporated.
aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Frank, does that wrap it up?
Yes, it should.
All right. Thank all of you very much, the interested stakeholders, for being here. Thank you for your collaborative efforts.
Yeah,
It's always
it's always right. It's 3 months after the hearing.